Hello and thanks for joining us on the news at 7 on NT International. I am Elizabeth Omori and our sign language interpreter is Courage Ogiriahi. Now let's take a look at the headlines. Vice President Shettima at UN Food Systems Summit says Nigeria commits over $500 million for innovative and sustainable food systems transformation initiative. As world observes Drowning Prevention Day, experts advocate adopting life-saving skills. Plus, Mali drops French as official language. We begin with the Food Systems Summit in Rome. Nigeria has mobilized over $500 million for innovative, profitable, equitable and sustainable food system transformation initiative. Vice President Kashim Shettima disclosed this while chairing a high-level meeting at the UN Food Systems Summit in Rome. The Vice President said the funds were mobilized through domestic resources, multilateral development banks, international financial institutions, climate funds, leading agro-businesses, and will be used for innovation financing for food system transformation, development of Nigeria's agro-value chain and special agro-industrial processing zones programs. The VP also explained that the government of Nigeria will be showcasing its value chain development program as a unique example of a successful partnership between producers and public sector as well as private operators. The VP says the federal government is determined to capacitate Nigeria's rural smallholders and operators, youth and women living below the poverty line to take advantage of the new special processing zones. On the special agro-industrial processing zone, Vice President Shettima says it brings together local governments, IFAD, AFDB, ISDB, GCF, OLAM and other private actors alongside the government of Nigeria for transformative financing of food systems that leaves no one behind. In other news, wildfires have killed not less than 34 persons in Algeria and spread to Tunisia as a heat wave which has left and swept across the Mediterranean region sparked devastating flames that authorities have struggled to control. Bemui has details.
The blistering heat, which sparked wildfires that destroyed homes and caused the evacuation of thousands of tourists from the Greek island of Rhodes, has extended to dry and mountainous parts of northern Algeria and Tunisia, where fires have also broken out. The near-record high temperatures around the Mediterranean this month have been linked to climate change by scientists, who have warned that the region should brace up for more intense and longer-lasting heat waves. The Algerian Interior Ministry said on Monday that 10 soldiers battling the flames were among those killed. Reports say the coastal province of Abuja, east of the capital Algiers, had the highest death toll, with 22 persons killed and some 200 injured. About 1,500 people have been evacuated from the worst affected areas, according to the ministry, which said almost 100 fires had broken out in more than a dozen provinces. It said 8,000 firefighters were working to put out the flames fanned by temperatures in some part of the country which reached 50 degrees Celsius. Summer wildfires have become a regular occurrence in northern Algeria over recent years. 37 people died in forest fires last year, while dozens of deaths were recorded in 2021 as flames raced through the forested mountains of the Kabylie region. Bemui, NT News.
Meanwhile, the European Union is setting up a dedicated sanctions framework for Sudan to eventually target key actors in the ongoing war with travel bans and asset, as well as bank account freezes. This has been confirmed by diplomatic sources familiar with the matter. Details once again with Bem Onyi.
Fighting started in Sudan. At least 250,000 people have escaped to Chad, the vast majority of whom are women and children crossing the border every day. The funding will be used to respond to the most urgent needs of refugee populations living in extreme precarious situations. The total funding mobilized for interventions in Chad since the beginning of the crisis in Sudan now amounts to more than £18.6 million. This is in addition to the £30.5 million mobilized so far in 2023 in favor of the most vulnerable people in other provinces of Chad. A new flight of the humanitarian air bridge hub arrived Jamena. This flight, the third since the launch of the hub at the end of May, is carrying nearly 90 tons of supplies from different humanitarian partners. Out of the total cargo, 52 tons are donated by the EU from its pre-positioned stockpile in Bridgestone, which will be delivered to humanitarian partners.
Is to underscore the UN solidarity with the government and people of Chad in light of the massive influx of Sudanese refugees in the eastern region of the country over the last few months.
The humanitarian air bridge is organized in the framework of European humanitarian response capacity, which aims at filling gaps in the humanitarian response to natural and human-made disasters. The previous two flights delivered around 180 tons of essential supplies for several partners, including medicine, shelter, water and sanitation equipment, school supplies, and other non-food items.
For 2023, the EU had already allocated £30.5 million to respond to humanitarian needs in other parts of Chad as part of its humanitarian aid in West and Central Africa. The region continues to face a protracted crisis driven by conflict and worsened by climate change and the global spike in food prices. Hamman Jabani, NTA News.
That was Aman Jabani's report on EU's allocation for humanitarian aid in Chad. With its new constitution, Mali has dropped French, which has been the West African country's official language since 1960. Under the new constitution passed overwhelmingly with 96.91% of the vote in a June 18 referendum, French is no longer the official language. Bemwe brings us details.
French will be the working language from now on in Mali, and the 13 national languages spoken in the country will also receive official language status. Around 70 local languages are spoken in the country, and some of them, including Bambara, Bobo, Dogon, and Minyanka, were granted national language status under a 1982 decree. The presidency says Mali's junta leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, put the country's new constitution into effect, marking the beginning of the Fourth Republic in the West African nation. Since taking over power in an August 2020 coup, Mali's military has maintained that the constitution would be critical to rebuilding the country. Mali witnessed two subsequent coups in recent years, one in August 2020 and the other in May 2021. The junta had initially promised to hold elections in February 2022, but later delayed them to February 2024. Bemunyi, NTA News.
Still on the foreign scene, the United Nations has started transferring 1 million barrels of oil from a rusting supertank off war-torn Yemen to a replacement vessel. Chukwunonso Nwabweze reports that this is in a bid to avert a catastrophic spill.
The United Nations is spearheading the transfer of 1.14 million barrels of Malib light crude from a 47-year-old FSO Safer to a new vessel and is expected to take around 3 weeks to conclude the operation, which began Tuesday at about 10:45 a.m. Yemen time.
The ship-to-ship transfer of oil, which has started today, is the critical next step in avoiding an environmental and humanitarian catastrophe on a colossal scale.
The UN hopes the $143 million operation will eliminate the risk of an environmental disaster that its estimates would cost $20 billion to clean up.
It's cleaning and scrapping the...
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says a spill would also cost billions of dollars per day in shipping disruptions while devastating coastal fishing communities, ecosystems, and lifeline ports.
Hundreds of thousands of jobs would instantly disappear. Whole communities would be exposed to deadly toxins. Major ports, including Hodeida and Salif, would be forced to close indefinitely. and food, fuel, and life-saving supplies for millions would halt.
The aging vessel, a floating storage and offloading facility, has not been serviced since war broke out 8 years ago in Yemen and is carrying 4 times as much oil as was spilled in the 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster off Alaska. Chukwunonsonwa Boeze, NTN News.
Statistics indicate that about 236,000 people die from drowning every year, with 2.5 million deaths over the past decade. 90% of these deaths are recorded in developing countries. With the world marking International Drowning Prevention Day, Charles Alpha takes a look at casualties from drowning and how it can be prevented.
In the past 10 years, many men, women and children have lost their lives trying to cross large water bodies. Some die in riverine communities and swimming pools, with the highest drowning rates occurring among children aged 1 to 4 and 5 to 9.
This day is set aside to draw attention to the number of fatalities we record always annually.
In 2023, the 76th World Health Assembly adopted its first ever resolution on drowning prevention to facilitate the observance of the World Drowning Prevention Day on 25th of July every year. To mark this year's World Drowning Prevention Day, advocates are drawing attention on drowning as a public health issue, reminding people that anyone can drown, but no one should.
You see that usually boats are overloaded and they are not properly made to suit the situation, and because of that, and the people are also not prepared. They no life jacket.
Those who construct boats and build boats should also have licenses and be taught how to build boats that are good enough to be on our waterways.
People should be careful whenever it rains. Don't take the risks of saying, I can swim and cross over. Make sure you assess the level of water, flowing water, before going into it.
While experts feel these casualties occur largely during the rainy season and at pools, there is need for proper licensing and regulation of marine transport and guards on waterways and pools. Charles Alpha, NTN News.
And to speak more on the essence of the day is Michael Teungwa David, Executive Director, Global Initiative for Food Security and Ecosystem Preservation. Mr. Teungwa, thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
All right, the focus this year is to raise awareness on drowning as a public health issue, reminding people that anyone could drown. Very important, but no one should. How do you speak to this year's theme?
So anyone can drown. Even the expert swimmers can get drowned, but no one actually should, especially children. So we look at this issue in 2 ways. One is those who live in riverine communities and have to use canoes and boats to access their farms and go to the market or just to commute. And then those who build swimming pools in their homes or even in private or public places like hotels. So, first, safety. And I'll again repeat, safety. We are not conscious of our safety, and this is where the issue is. The standards are not being obeyed. So, who monitors the waterways? Who controls the type of boats that should be on our waterways? Who monitors to know that the drivers of these canoes and boats are qualified? Like you have vehicles who have licenses. Do we have canoe drivers with licenses?
Okay, now that brings me to my next question. Given the number of casualties in the last decade with the attendant risk associated with drowning, people still embark on crossing large waters. Are there laws prohibiting this act?
Well, many people do not have other means of transportation or access to their communities, so they do not have a choice. But what we need to do is to raise the standard and ensure that anyone who is on Nigeria's waterway is wearing a life jacket.
Okay.
Anyone who is on Nigeria's waterway should have some basic skills of swimming and life saving, in the water. Just like you go to hotels and you find where it is written, if there's no lifeguard on duty, no one should swim. But you still find people who cannot swim, jump into the pool and get drowned. In Nigeria, recently, you see kids, of many prominent people who just get into the pool and just get drowned because we don't take care of safety. We build pools right in our homes, but there is no barricade to prevent children, from having access to these pools. So what we really need to do is the awareness, especially with climate change. Cases of flooding have increased. Recently, the flooding in Trademore Estate in Lugbe, a lot of people died as a result of that flood, simply because they cannot swim. So we can start from, schools, teach kids basic swimming skills. So the question we should ask ourselves, or Nigerians should ask themselves, is, can you swim? If there is flooding, what will you do? So for me, I will always advise that the first law, prevention is better than cure.
All right, let me ask you this. When we talk about flooding, it happens everywhere globally. Even in Nigeria, we're experiencing flooding. But really, what should be the response mechanism like from the government in saving more lives?
So we have the federal inland waterways. There must be regulations and standards, continuous monitoring of our waterways. Standards such that any home that is to build a swimming pool, there must be control. Not every property must have a pool. Not every canoe must be on our waterway. Who builds this canoe? Is there a standard? The last incidents that happened in Pategi in Kwara State was very pathetic.
Okay. All right, Mr. Tengwa, this is the much I can take from you. I hope we'll have larger platforms to talk more about this advocacy. Thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We'll take a break now. More reports when we return. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Still talking flooding actually, Senate has appealed to the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, to reach out to victims of last weekend's flood disaster on the Ibadan-Ife Expressway, which is the second busiest road linking the southwest and northern parts of Nigeria. The motion raised by Senate Deputy Minority Leader Olalere Kamarudin informed the Senate that a flood caused an erosion that has never been experienced in that axis and also led to huge economic losses. Senate asked the Federal Minister of Works to direct the contractor handling the road construction to immediately effect repairs on the affected portion of the road to avert further damage.
And also to equally assist in the channelization of other affected areas in Ikire, Ikoyi, Apamo, and Bogan communities.
Away from flood mitigation, the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has granted bail to the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. He was granted bail by Justice Nicola Owebo in the sum of 20 million naira after his arraignment. Adiola Komiakere reports that the suspended CBN governor was equally rearrested at the court premises.
The suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, was brought before the Federal High Court on a 2-count charge bordering on illegal possession of a single-barrel shot and alleged possession of 23 rounds of live ammunition without license. The offence contravenes Section 4 of the Firearms Laws of the Federation 2004 and punishable under the same Act. When the charges were read to him, he pleaded not guilty. Counsel to Emefiele, Joseph Daudu, SAN, informed the court of a pending application for bail. The prosecuting counsel, Jones, told the court that they did not receive any bail application and as such did not know what to respond to. The lead counsel to Godwin Emefiele, Joseph Daudu, SAN, noted that the prosecuting counsel's claim is not feasible as bail application was sent to the office of the Attorney General of the Federation on the 18th of June. Joseph Daudu appealed to the court to grant bail to the defendant as bail is within the discretion of the court. In the ruling, Justice Owebo granted bail to the defendant to the tune of 20 million naira and a surety in like sum. Emefiele is to be remanded in the Ikoyi Correctional Service pending the perfection of his bail.
Sooner than that was done, we noticed movement from men of the Department of State Services, and we saw an avowed intention on their part to actually take him back into their custody, despite the order of court. We then called the attention of the learned trial judge, who was magnanimous to hear us, and we told him that these were our fears, and that in the interests of the rule of law, due process, and democracy in this country, that the court judge should intervene.
The matter has been adjourned to the 14th of November 2023 for the commencement of trial. Adeola Komiakere, NTA News.
Relief has come the way of 2 university trade unions in Nigeria as the National Industrial Court Abuja gives its nod to their registrations by the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment. Olabode Arira reports that the suit opposing their existence was filed by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU.
Following the institution of a suit by the federal government against the prolonged industrial action by members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, the trade union filed another suit before Justice Polycarp Aman, challenging the government's registration of the Congress of Nigerian University Academics and the National Association of Medical and Dental Academics as breakaway trade unions. But quoting from the Trade Unions Act and the International Labour Organization Convention as it concerns collective bargaining, Justice Polycarp Aman held that it was within the rights of CONWA and NAMDA to seek registration as government-accredited trade unions.
The 2 unions, CONWA and NAMDA, so they are legitimate trade unions to operate in the university space.
The members of NAMDA, they cut across the university and the tertiary health institutions that are involved in the training of doctors. And these persons, they've never been unionized. And so it will have been very bad if they are blocked.
That with health salary, 7.5 months with health salary should be paid to CONWA members without further delay. Because at no time, and we have consistently maintained that we're not on strike. And court has validated that position today.
Meanwhile, the substantive matter between ASU and the federal government is still before the Court of Appeal. In Abuja, Olabode Arira, NTA News.
And next is a look at the weather picture for tomorrow Wednesday for Nigeria and other cities around the world. And that ends the news at this time on NT International. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Elizabeth Omori, and our sign language interpreter is Courage Ogiriahi.